Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Thursday, September 3rd. Thanks for joining us. I'm John Carroll, in for Maya Trabulsi. With another heat wave hitting our state this weekend, power officials have issued a flex alert. High energy demand is expected, but what about another round of rolling blackouts? KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman looked into it.
With this type of heat we're talking about on Saturday and Sunday, it's not normal heat.
Alex Tardy with the National Weather Service is expecting records to be broken.
A lot of people will say, well, I know it's hot in Escondido. They don't need to tell me that. No, you don't know it's 110. That's not normal heat even in Escondido.
The heat wave is stretching across our state and is forcing a flex alert, asking millions of Californians to dial back their electricity use this weekend.
The entire West is competing for supply going into the hot periods. We rely on what is a limited set of capacity in California and the West.
Officials who operate our state's power grid aren't forecasting any rolling blackouts like we saw last month, but that could change at a moment's notice. Officials say part of the problem is that when the sun goes down, solar power goes away, but energy use is still up.
We need to be cognizant of the needs of the system, not just at peak hour, and we need to make sure that there's enough capacity and capability to meet the demand in all hours.
The statewide flex alert is in effect from Saturday to Monday from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. each day. Officials say air conditioners are their biggest concern. During the flex alert, Californians are asked to conserve their energy as much as they can. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
San Diego's 50-year contract with SDG&E expires soon. Coming up, why some are pushing for the city to create a public power company and what that would look like. Now for an update on COVID-19 in San Diego County. Today, 5 more deaths were announced, bringing the total since the pandemic began to 700. 325 new cases were also reported. This has been the first week under the state's new tiered system for tracking the virus and reopening businesses. We are currently in Tier 2, also known as the red tier. The state will reevaluate our status next Tuesday. Leaders of the San Diego Unified School District joined some of the region's congressional members today to urge federal approval of the HEROES Act. KPBS reporter Jacob Ayer says the stimulus bill includes funding for schools.
Since schools physically closed in March to prevent the spread of COVID-19, San Diego Unified shifted to online learning. The district provided students with access to school meals, laptops, and Wi-Fi connection. But the pandemic has resulted in unforeseen costs for things needed to stop the spread of COVID-19 and keep students learning new material.
School districts need to purchase personal protective equipment for children and for adults. And we need to increase the cleaning and the daily health checks. And we have to modify our school buildings, including our classrooms, our gymnasiums, our auditoriums, our cafeterias, and our school buses, so that we can meet the social distancing guidelines and recommendations.
The CARES Act passed in March, but less than 1% of the $2 trillion package went to schools. Now public education leaders say schools like San Diego High School are not receiving the funding they need to prioritize the safety, health, and learning environment for their students.
We have the best students. We have the best teachers here in California. They want to teach and these kids want to learn, but they need a safe environment.
The CARES Act allotted $30 billion for education. The House version of the HEROES Act was passed with $58 billion for local school districts. The Senate version includes $70 billion.
The state doesn't have the money. The school districts don't have the money. Only the federal government can do it.
But Congress is at an impasse over the next stimulus package. House Democrats want a nearly $3.4 trillion package, while Senate Republicans are pushing for a smaller $1 trillion relief plan. They're scheduled to return to work next week. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
Senators will return to Capitol Hill after Labor Day to take another look at COVID-related stimulus relief. Democrats put forward the multi-trillion-dollar HEROES Act months ago, but Republicans are balking at the cost. The White House is supporting leaner legislation to fund schools, small businesses, and scaled-back federal unemployment benefits. The two sides remain far apart.
I can tell you at the moment is we're at a stalemate, so I don't know whether we're going to get another package here in the next few weeks or not.
Secretary Mnuchin, I hope you will return to the negotiating table prepared to find common cause on legislation that meets the pressing needs of Americans.
The budget deadline is coming up at the end of the month. If they can't agree on a deal to fund the government, lawmakers will face yet another shutdown. Less than 1 million Americans filed for unemployment benefits last week. The Labor Department says 881,000 Americans filed initial claims. 13 million Americans filed continued claims, those that have filed for at least 2 weeks in a row. But the Labor Department changed its methodology for seasonal adjustments, starting with this report. Some labor experts say the number of Americans filing for benefits would be closer to 1 million using the previous methodology. The community fridge that recently popped up in North Park is now gone. We brought you the story earlier this week on Evening Edition. The fridge was set up by some young people who got the support of the owner of Hangers Cleaners to put it next to his business, and he agreed to supply power to the fridge. But the owner, Gordon Shaw, says his landlord told him the fridge had to go or he'd be evicted. We're told the young people behind the project are now looking for someplace else to host the fridge. A new state law and a federal order will help protect tenants from eviction during the next few months of the COVID-19 pandemic. KPBS reporter Max Rivlin-Nadler tells us how these two work together and why they won't stop all evictions.
The last-minute legislation from California was followed by a nationwide order from the Centers for Disease Control, making it much easier for tenants in California to stave off eviction. Between the two of them, any tenant in California who can't pay rent because of the financial or health impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic will be protected from evictions until at least January 31st. But navigating the protections, which include paying a minimum of 25% of rent from now until the end of January and filing signed declarations with your landlord, will still be a lot of work for renters.
I fear, Max, for people who are going to try this on their own and say, oh, well, I can do this.
With housing courts reopening this week, landlords can now bring new eviction cases. Social distancing requirements mean that the court is processing these slowly, but the Legal Aid Society of San Diego fears that landlords who for months haven't received rent and little relief from the state or federal governments will move aggressively to push out tenants.
What we've been seeing lately, which I never thought, that we would, is landlord attorneys who are being, in my view, not all, let me be clear, Max, not all, but some unscrupulous and trying to get around all protections and filing papers that are bad, should be thrown out.
The rules surrounding an eviction have also changed. Instead of just 3 days between a landlord giving a tenant a notice of eviction and their possible eviction, tenants now have 15 days. And landlords must provide them with the paperwork asking them if they're not paying rent because of the impact of the pandemic. The San Diego Sheriff's Department hasn't stopped enforcing evictions during the pandemic. Since March, sheriff's deputies have carried out 66 evictions, with 43 of those coming in just the past month. Prior to the pandemic, the Sheriff's Department says it was serving over 400 evictions per month. The Legal Aid Society of San Diego says it will have a website up on Friday, specially geared to renters in San Diego County looking to avoid evictions under the new law and federal order. Max Rivlin-Nadler, KPBS News.
An investigation by iNews sources found deaths at home are up across San Diego County since the pandemic began. Some of those deaths involve COVID-19 victims who received little or no medical help. iNews source investigative reporter Mary Plummer has this story on a family in San Marcos.
When Hector Navarro Lopez got sick, he went to a COVID-19 public testing site in Escondido. As he waited for the results, he sought medical care at North County Health Services in San Marcos for stomach problems and a high fever. But according to his wife, Noemi Arroyo Ramirez, the staff screening patients turned him away. He instead had a phone call later with a doctor. His wife says the instructions were to reach out once they had the test results. She said she did that, but no one called back. That was the last medical care her husband would get before he died of the coronavirus a week and a half later.
Nobody called me to let me know how to take care of him. Not the county, not the clinic, any doctor, nobody. Nobody told us anything.
At home in San Marcos, Navarro Lopez isolated in a bedroom. The couple's children went to a hotel so they wouldn't get sick. Arroyo cared for her husband, relying on what she learned from television, Google search results, and her own intuition.
He was okay. He don't have more cough, and he just had one fever in the night. 103 was the highest, and he took a shower, and I gave medication, like Tylenol for the fever. And he was okay. He was talking good. He was walking good. I asked every single time, do you feel okay? Are you okay? You don't have fever? You don't have, pain or respiratory problems? And he said no.
On May 27th, Navarro Lopez woke early, saying there was a problem with his legs. His wife called 911. She says he walked normally to the stretcher. It was the last time she would see him. He had 2 heart attacks and died on the way to the hospital. The clinic declined to comment on Navarro Lopez's care. In a statement, the CEO said they've been committed to caring for the community throughout the pandemic. County public health officials say people tested at public clinics are supposed to be contacted by public nurses with care instructions. Navarro Lopez's family says that never happened. Officials say hospitals are safe and urge residents not to be afraid to seek medical care. For KPBS, I'm iNews Source investigative reporter Mary Plummer.
This story was co-reported by iNews Source reporter Jill Castellano. iNews Source is an independently funded nonprofit partner of KPBS. Next week, UC San Diego will start recruiting people to take part in another COVID-19 vaccine clinical trial. They need a little less than 3,000 people from San Diego County and the Imperial Valley to take part in Phase 3 of AstraZeneca's trial. Researchers are looking for healthy adults, ages 18 and up. They're prioritizing communities hardest hit by the virus, including the South Bay and East County, as well as essential workers.
As part of this outreach effort, is to increase people's awareness of the potential benefit of vaccines, all vaccines, so that if and when we have an effective vaccine for prevention of COVID, these communities, people at greatest risk, are willing to take that vaccine.
UCSD health researchers will be driving a mobile vaccine clinic to communities including Chula Vista, Imperial Beach, and La Mesa. They won't allow walk-ups, but will meet people who have contacted them online or by phone for an appointment. Movie theaters are among the businesses that are now reopening under state guidelines, but if you decide to take in a flick, it'll be a very different experience than what it was pre-pandemic. At the Reading Cinemas in Claremont, you will notice a difference as soon as you get to the box office. No cash allowed. The theater urges customers to buy their tickets in advance and reserve their seats. Seating capacity is being held at 25%. Masks are required. Physical distancing reminders are everywhere on the floors. Surfaces are being sanitized between movies, but health experts say staying in enclosed spaces around other people is risky. The main concern is ventilation.
How much air is exchanged from the outside. We know from studies that places that don't exchange a lot of outside air, that the ventilation can make a big difference on spreading virus.
The manager at Reading Cinemas says they've taken every possible precaution to keep people safe, and he says movies provide a getaway from day-to-day reality that is its own kind of therapy. The movie theater might be a popular place this weekend as San Diegans try to escape the possibly record heat. Meteorologist Jeff Cornish has your forecast.
We are getting ready for a tremendous late summer heat wave. Excessive heat warnings have been issued all the way to the coast. Typically, these are just inland, but even to the coastline. An offshore wind is going to lead to extreme heat as we step on through the weekend. This weekend, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, excessive heat warnings are in effect for us, even in the city of San Diego. Record highs will be challenged in many cities across the West, including in Southern California. So here it is. We're not mincing words with this. An excessive heat warning in effect for the entire area here in Southern California, all the way to the coast. Tonight, we're in transition to this warmer, hotter time. Temperatures will drop to a low of 69 in San Diego, a warm one into Borrego Springs with a low of 81, 62 into Mount Laguna, Campo 60 for your low, El Cajon around 67 degrees. And then tomorrow, 101 in Ramona, 113 in Borrego Springs, 80, very warm in San Diego, but the heat will build beyond Friday. So the weekend forecast, high heat across most of the West. Eventually, we'll get some much cooler air into the central U.S., but that's going to be mainly east of the Continental Divide. Snow into the northern Rockies next week, but this weekend, just high heat across the entire West. Then the jet stream plunges south, but it misses us. We stay under the really hot air mass early in the week. Monday, record highs still likely in many areas across the West and for many folks across the Southwest, while others get an October preview. We cannot be as fortunate. So along the coast, look at these highs. 95 on Sunday in San Diego, 87 Monday. The heat begins to back off. Still very warm, though. Tuesday back to 82, and it will be more humid than normal as well. So AccuWeather real field temperatures are going to be through the roof. Inland areas 109 Saturday and Sunday, very hot. 99 still on Monday. Be exceptionally careful. Don't overdo it when you're out into the mountains. Upper 80s, not far from 90 on Sunday in the high elevations. High heat out there. And in the deserts, 115 Sunday, 116 Saturday as well. And then 117 as the heat reaches its pinnacle in the deserts into Monday. So an exceptional late summer, near record heat wave for many of us. Be safe out there. I'm meteorologist Jeff Cornish for KPBS News.
For about a century, San Diegans have been buying their electricity from San Diego Gas and Electric, but the city's agreement with the company is about to expire. Mayor Kevin Faulconer says he plans to put a new agreement up for bid to private utilities. Earlier, I spoke with KPBS Science and Technology reporter Shalina Chatlani about this highly charged issue. For about a century, San Diegans have been buying their energy from the same place, San Diego Gas and Electric. But in January, a 50-year-old agreement will expire and the city needs to decide what to do. Mayor Kevin Faulconer says he plans to put the agreement up for bid to private utilities, but community activists want a new energy future. They want public power, and they're willing to fight for it. KPBS Science and Technology reporter Shalina Chatlani joins us to talk about this highly charged issue. Hi, Shalina.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So when you say community advocates are willing to fight for public power, what exactly do you mean?
Yeah, this is definitely not like any other movement that I have ever seen before. So let's take a little bit of a look at the tape to get an idea of what it's all about.
Public power now! Public power now!
So as you can see, people are lined on the stairs of the tall brown skyscraper at 101 Ash Street downtown. So for a little bit of background, the skyscraper has gained lots of headlines for costing the city hundreds of millions of dollars, but now it turns out it's filled with asbestos and it remains empty. So activists came here because they say this building is a gigantic waste of money. Also, paying the highest electricity rates in the state is also a gigantic waste of money. What they mean by fighting for public power is that they are going to work with council members to make sure that they can ask for a city-owned utility, and if that doesn't pan out, then they'll continue to build community support for it.
So what exactly is public power, and more specifically, why do they want it?
So public power means the city owns the utility and runs it like a nonprofit rather than a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Activists want this for a few reasons. First, they're confident rates would go down with a public utility. Here's former Union Tribune energy journalist Craig Rose.
We're paying $18,000 a day to pay for this uninhabitable building. The current franchise to SDG&E is delivering $1 million a day in profits, 50 times larger.
Rose explains San Diego Gas and Electric customers pay the highest rates in the state, while cities that own their own public utilities, like the one in Sacramento, pay among the lowest rates in the state. Activists also say there's another really big reason here. San Diego has very ambitious climate change goals. They say that would be easier under a public-owned utility.
Public power means the city would have to buy SDG&E's infrastructure. I guess municipalization is not an easy thing, right?
In order to municipalize, you have to take over the utility's existing poles and wires. And you can't just take them over, you have to pay for them. And that can cost billions of dollars.
So we know what the activists think and maybe what some of them have been willing to do, but what about city leadership?
Well, Mayor Kevin Faulconer has made it very clear that he wants a new deal with a private utility, most likely that deal being with San Diego Gas and Electric, the current utility that holds the franchise agreement. And some other high-profile city leaders have said city administration hasn't proven competent enough to handle such an undertaking of running its own utility. Here's what Councilmember and mayoral candidate Barbara Bree had to say about that.
It is not free to take over those transmission lines. We have to issue billions of dollars worth of bonds and pay that money back. So that's an operating cost. Second, I have no confidence in the city to operate anything.
So bottom line, if the city wants to take this leap, it will cost taxpayers anywhere between $2 to just under $5 billion. If it's in the $2 to $3 billion range, most experts say that would be a win for the city. The city would save money over time, and those cost scenarios are the most likely. But if it ends up being on the range of $5 billion or even more, it's not a good deal. So Mayor Kevin Faulconer has made his position clear that he's considering that it will probably be more in the $5 billion range and is moving ahead with an auction to take bids from private utilities that want to take up the franchise agreement. Now, on the other hand, activists that say that they don't want a private utility say they're not going to give up the fight. They're going to push for council members not to vote on any, agreement that comes up, and hope to gain municipal utility in 3 to 7 years.
Okay, I've been speaking to KPBS science and technology reporter Shalina Chatlani. Shalina, a lot of information. Thank you so much for the explainer.
Thanks for having me, John.
Democratic presidential hopeful Joe Biden visited Kenosha, Wisconsin today following racial unrest over the police shooting of Jacob Blake. As Karen Kafa tells us, he brought a different message than President Donald Trump did earlier this week.
Joe and Jill Biden in Kenosha, Wisconsin, as the community attempts to heal.
I'm optimistic about the opportunity if we seize it.
Violent protests consumed parts of the city after police shot Jacob Blake in the back.
This is not who we are.
Biden met with the Blake family, something President Trump didn't do during his visit to Kenosha Tuesday. Instead, the president thanked law enforcement.
I want to thank your police and your great people from law enforcement. They've done a fantastic job.
Toward damaged property.
We're going to work with you. We're going to help you. Okay? We'll help you rebuild.
And promised to bring his campaign message to the community.
They want law and order.
The trips from the two candidates serve a political purpose. Wisconsin voters could be the key to winning the White House. In 2016, Wisconsin, along with Michigan and Pennsylvania, catapulted Trump to the presidency. Now, the Trump campaign attempting to hold on to at least one of those states, but it could be an uphill battle. A poll of registered Wisconsin voters shows Biden leading Trump 49 to 41%. In Pennsylvania, a new survey shows no clear leader in the critical battleground state, which is why President Trump is in the Keystone State Thursday, and Joe Biden took a trip on Monday.
I've decided to come to Pittsburgh to talk a little bit about what's going on right now.
As the campaigns watch the polls and do the math, the push for swing states will only get more intense as November nears. At the White House, I'm Karen Kafa.
Facebook says it's taking action to stop efforts to undermine the 2020 presidential election. The company says it will not accept new political ads the week before November's election. Facebook will remove posts claiming people will get COVID-19 if they vote. The company says it will also label misinformation about the election and voting, like saying mail-in ballots lead to fraud. We have everything you need to know about the 2020 election on our website, kpbs.org/election. There you can find key deadlines and links to check your voter status and track your ballot. Plus, you'll find our recent stories on local candidates and ballot initiatives.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, the president takes heat for telling voters to cast ballots twice to test the system as Joe Biden escalates his rhetoric. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Here's a recap now of today's top stories. The San Diego Unified School District joined local congressional members today to urge federal approval of the HEROES Act. The CARES Act passed in March, but less than 1% of that package went to schools. Now, public education leaders say schools don't have the funds they need to cover costs related to the pandemic. And a new state law and federal order will help protect tenants from eviction through at least January 31st. But renters must pay a minimum of 25% of their rent until then. The Legal Aid Society of San Diego fears that landlords are going to move aggressively to push tenants out now that housing courts are reopening this week. This Labor Day weekend's heat is expected to be a record breaker. That's prompted a statewide flex alert Saturday through Monday. You're asked to reduce your energy use between 3 p.m. and 9 p.m. Officials who operate the state's power grid aren't forecasting any rolling blackouts like last month, but that could change in the coming days. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following: and by viewers like you. Thank you.